Welcome back to another episode of Just Figuring It Out. We just figured out the name of our podcast, no pun intended, and we're going to roll with it. I'm super excited. Welcome back. We've got, of course, the crew. We got Ian and Alex and myself. It is July 3rd, the day before the 250th anniversary of the founding of America, which is a pretty exciting time. It's been super hot all over the country, but I'm really excited. We're going to dive in to a couple different things. One, I really want to make sure we dive into a topic that I've just been seeing come up online a lot. I think we see it with our clients probably every single day, especially prospects that come in, which is a topic near and dear to our heart about how is it possible that you can be profitable on paper and yet feel like you're more broke than ever when it comes to cash or cash on hand. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, just got to check in with the crew. Fellas, how are we doing?
All the
Can't see
thumbs
Ian's
up.
double thumbs up, but there was a double thumbs up there.
I'm great for podcasting with my gestures.
This is
They
going to
can't
be a
hear his
visual
double-
only podcast, no audio, just strictly hand signs.
I'm just here to help.
Alex, what's been good with you?
Dude, I am fantastic. I'm so excited to nerd out with you guys today. I've missed it the last couple of weeks. We missed 2 weeks in a row, and we're excited to be back here.
I know we've had business stuff, life stuff, all kinds of the stuffs, and we'll have to maybe come back at the end of this episode and talk about bidets because that's what we were talking about before we hit record. Ian is getting an upstairs bidet. If that's, I can wait to post this for a few weeks, and if we want for that to come out, but that's going to be exciting. We've had an interesting time over the last few weeks. Been onboarding some new clients, especially fractional CFO clients, which is a great topic. I was just seeing a post by another of their bookkeeper account who does fractional CFO work, and they were talking about a client of theirs who I believe is in construction. Maybe it was landscaping, and they were like, "Hey, I have a client that came to me and went through their books, and they're profitable on paper. The P&L is saying that they're profitable." And he goes, "But when I talk to the owner, they feel cash strapped all the time." And I know for us, this is obviously lifeblood of what we live every single day. I thought it might be interesting to go through like, one, if someone's out there that doesn't, business owner, and they don't really look at their books all that often, and they're probably wondering like, I feel profitable. I think I'm profitable. For context, Ian, Alex, and I are on calls with small business owners anywhere from $500,000 a year in revenue up to 15, 20 million sometimes a year in revenue. And it's weekly, if not daily, in these conversations where I had somebody a couple weeks ago who was like, "Yeah, we're doing 8 million a year in revenue." It's like, and I said, "Oh, that's great. Like, are you profitable?" He goes, "I don't know. I think so." And you're like, hey, obviously in our world, it's common, but we've been there. Alex and I have been there. Ian, I know you've been there in business too, where you're like, feels profitable, but I don't really know, and then we get into like, what does that mean? And so I thought it was just a good one that comes up all the time. And I feel like the time this comes up most is when you feel cash strapped. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know for you guys. Maybe I'll lead with that there for you guys. Maybe I'll start with Ian. When does this even arise? Like, when does somebody usually have this feeling of like, things should be better? I feel like they should be better, but I don't actually have the cash that I probably feel like I should. I guess I'd be curious, when do we see this often like crop up for people? It's usually not week one of business, I would assume, but like, when do you feel this sort of starts to happen?
I'd say probably there's 3 major ones that I notice. One is going to be tax season when sorry everyone for that feeling that you just
Trigger word around in this podcast.
you're a business owner. So once tax season comes around and let's say the amount wasn't what you thought it would be and you're looking at the cash in your bank account and going, how am I going to handle that one? Thinking, hey, they just told me I was X profitable, but this is all that's sitting in my bank account. Number 2, usually some sort of payroll cycle or something that's a larger chunk that is required for a company to actually pay in cash. They can't pay it on a credit card or something like that. So that's a big one too, because they'll be like, whoa, I got $30K coming out in payroll next week. I got 20 in my account, but wait, we had this crazy month last month and we we're doing great. And what's going on here? And I think the third would be, when they're going usually to a bank to apply for something or to go check on, maybe I'm trying to apply for like an equipment loan or do something else. And then they get the numbers back and they actually look and see what's going on versus what's in their account. So it's usually these forcing functions or these, I call it like internal pressure of the year that naturally is going to happen. And then it forces you to go, wait, I have to come up with this thing or have to look at this thing. And it's not what I thought it was for my cash versus profitability. I'm going to throw a fourth in for funsies. A lot of people don't check their profit and loss or income statement, whatever you want to call it, live your best life. They don't check it monthly. Or if they do, it's just randomly sent to them. And it usually in their head does not match up what they were like, we did this in sales, I thought, or I really actually looked at this and we actually took 3 big jobs on. Why on earth does it say we're negative 30K or positive 50K? Like, it doesn't feel like that right now where I'm sitting. Those are the main ones. Sorry, Alex, if I said all the things, but you probably have way more because you're better at stuff.
I love that we see things from such unique angles together. It's really fun. This is what's fun about this podcast. Can I jump in and answer the question, Will, that you were talking about of like when we see this for people?
Please.
Ian, I think, nailed it with like the biggest one is like that taxes, right? And payroll. One of the things that I think when people start feeling this is when they recognize that they didn't just have like an off month. It wasn't just like, hey, it's like, hey, there's usually a combination of factors where it's like, this has been going on long enough. I feel like this is a problem. And what happens is we don't recognize the first couple of months of issues, maybe, and then it just starts creeping up on us. And what I often find for people is that they're using debt as a little bit of a band-aid that covers up the problem, and they don't feel it until they're like, my line of credit's maxed out. I'll get another one. Oh, I used up all my EIDL funds. This was like 5 years ago and everyone was just getting free money. It's like, yeah, I took 250,000 and I was fine. And then really interestingly, about 2 to 3 years after all the EIDL funds got distributed, people had to like face the problem again. One, all the EIDL funds were starting to come out of their bank account, right? They were paying them back. All the PPP funding and everything was drying up. So I started noticing this in about 2023 when people were like, hey, I am not getting propped up anymore by free or very cheap money. And it's especially relevant right now because money costs a lot more than it used to 3 or 5 years ago. And because debt is more expensive now, people are really starting to feel this as they go out to get new loans. Or if they had like there are a lot of business owners that will take a HELOC out on their home and the HELOC rates went way up because all rates went up. And now it's like, ooh, now like I'm paying down debt that used to be cheaper that is now more expensive. And so variable rate loans is a factor in all this. But then people usually recognize that like it hits us as business owners that this is a problem once we've exhausted the easy solutions, like I'll just pull from the line of credit or I'll just stretch terms with the vendor a little bit. That's fine. Instead of paying them on their net 15 terms, I'm paying them on net 30 and they're cool with it. And then I'm stretching to 45 days with some and ooh, boy, I'm like 80 behind and 90. And I'm like, there's a couple that are in the 120 plus bucket that I owe and they're starting to like hammer my door down. It's those things when they start feeling like, wow, I've exhausted my easy solutions and now I'm recognizing that something is off. And it typically happens when people as business owners, we're only looking at what's in the bank account and we're like, I don't know, the gut feel is if I've got X amount in the bank, I'm cool, I'm good. And then once we start seeing that number be smaller than it was a couple of years ago consistently, and we've like realistically, if we think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I pulled on this line of credit and now I'm going to get like merchant cash advance loans, or like I'm getting hit up by email and text all the time with people offering me easy money and I'm really considering it. Like that to me is the sign that like I'm seeing all these things, I'm noticing them, and I'm thinking, man, I might really need these. Or I go get an easy PayPal or QuickBooks loan or on deck loan and like all these things that are easy money. But then I recognize that didn't solve my problem. It just put a giant Band-Aid on it. And now I actually have to face reality. And so I think this is most painful when it's time to kind of take our heads out of the sand as business owners. And we recognize I can't just take the easy route of ignoring this anymore and grabbing the quick cash that covers up the problem. I actually have to address the problem. And I'm not sure what it is. And I'm wearing more hats than ever. Things feel more chaotic than ever. And I feel like I have less brain space to actually handle this because something has happened in the economy, or my crews are wanting to get paid more, or material costs have gone up. And I just feel like there's a lot going on. I don't know how I can handle this. And I use this term, I'm profitable on paper, but broke in the bank. That feeling of crap, what's wrong with me? And you're comparing yourself against lots of other people. And you're like, if everyone looked at my business from the outside, they would think I'm crushing it. I'm bigger than I've ever been. We landed bigger contracts than we've ever gotten. We have prestigious, on our webpage, we've got all these amazing looking jobs or whatever it is, client testimonials. But on the inside, I'm freaking the crap out and I'm losing sleep at night, feeling like, man, if I were to air my dirty laundry financially, what would people think? Like, would my employees stick around? Does my spouse know how urgent things are? I don't want to sit down and talk with my accountant because they might bring something up that like, yeah, I'm feeling a little bit maybe screwed, or like things are heading in a direction where they weren't, especially when we've had success in the past. And now we're feeling like, what happened? Like it was so easy for me before and now it's not now. That's when we start seeing and feeling this, at least from my perspective, is just when it gets so rough, we can't ignore it anymore.
No, I love the perspective of from both of you guys in the sense of, Ian talking about like, hey, there are these sort of pivotal moments or events that tend to spark the deeper emotion of this of like, crap, this is my awakening moment. But Alex, to your point, I think is just as powerful as it's so true. And I think we've lived this in our own small variation of it, of like, it's usually the second or third time it comes up that you start to go, this isn't I can't, there's no one simple workaround trick that's going to get me out of this. And that's the sort of deep rooted feeling of like, am I just pushing the can down the road even more? Right. And then you're right, those terms go up 45 days, kind of stretch it out to 90. And what's so funny to me, and not funny, sad, but funny in this, ironic, I guess is the right word, is like so many of the clients you work with are like, man, I don't get paid on time. I don't get paid in 100, supposed to get paid 90 days and they're pushing it out further. And it's like, there's a decent chance they're probably doing some of the same stuff and that they're facing similar bottlenecks and struggles, right? And the irony of like, man, if everyone just kind of had their financial stuff together, there are exceptions, I'm just generalizing here, but it does make me think. So, we're talking about sort of the symptoms of this. And I think that's, if we sort of summarize that, Alex, of sort of, well, actually, before we summarize, because I want to get into, we're going through sort of the symptoms. I'd be really curious getting into root causes of this, right? So like what ends up happening, which is, so you think about this, I think if you've been in business and you're not a financial person in general, and you're more of the entrepreneurial visionary type, I'm going to go with 90+% of the time someone has experienced something like this, where tax season hits, didn't save enough. I've been there. I'm lucky that Alex, when we started this, had the foresight of that. But even then, our first go around was like, did we save enough? I think we did. We didn't know anything about individual state tax percentages is what we do now. And what do we need to do for, our first time having K1s, all the stuff that you kind of pre-plan for, but you don't really know exactly. But it gets me thinking of all these symptoms obviously come from root causes of what's going on, right? And so we feel the symptom, and we're not here to judge anyone. We've lived this, but it is really important that we get to like root causes. And so I think, I guess, maybe I'll toss to you first on this of like, looking through this, is it just simple? Is it as simple as like, hey, we just didn't do any planning? Is it that we don't have any tracking systems in place for money coming in, going out? Is it even deeper of like, maybe it's our personal beliefs around avoiding money and we can always just out earn any kind of poor savings plans? Kind of curious on your end. I know we see this in a lot of different varieties. I know we could get case by case, but just kind of curious what you're seeing in general on that.
I choose D, all of the above. But also, I think there's something there because you had mentioned before you were talking about specifically something like a construction company. So we'll use an example. I think what tends to happen, especially in the businesses we see, is they've been in business for a bit and they're making a growth move, or they're deciding I would like to double or triple or do X, Y, Z. So they're wanting this growth move. And construction, for example, we see a lot of companies transitioning from doing a bunch of residential jobs. Now I'm taking on more commercial or enterprise or bigger jobs. So I'll give you an example of something I don't think a lot of people talk about. Percentages matter way more as you scale than perceived dollar amounts. And what I mean by this, I'll just give you it's sorry to get nerdy on all you listeners, but let's just math. Let's do some maths.
We'll do a cut. Nerd time. We'll do like
nerd alert.
Nerd alert. Yeah, we'll get a nerd alert sign coming in. Yeah.
Oftentimes we don't realize a great example is if you made an extra 100 grand in your business as revenue, but like your bottom line was 10%, right? Versus you make 50 at 20%, 50 at 20% math, crushing it. So you brought home the same thing. Now, depending on what you had to do for that energy, time, risk, liability wise, how many more people you had to manage, all the things you had to do, if that doesn't scale with what you ultimately want as an owner in your business to either like take home or to grow the business, you're essentially going to run into a ceiling or a wall. And what we find is a lot of people are working at their let's call it energetic or monetary energetic capacity. So they're at 100 or more and they're trying to grow and double their business. Instead of saying, hey, I have a buffer space that I could put some time and energy into growth. And even if I lost a bit of it or struggled, it wouldn't kill my business because the root of the thing is working. So in other words, I guess we're going to land this plane. I swear. They weren't in a strong position to grow to begin with, but they didn't know it. And they thought the answer was more revenue. And that's going to fix my problem because I'll figure it out once I hit 5 million because I can't do this at 2 million. But once I have 5 million, all my problems go away. but the foundational part of the business wasn't there to sustain that. So usually it just becomes a lot more pain to get to there. And that's okay. Like I've learned this the hard way a couple of times. And I think it's just something to remember as we get back to the philosophical, or like, hey, what's the point of this business? And I love to ask an owner when they say, hey, Ian, I want to go from 3 million to 6 million. I'm like, cool, love it. What's that money for? Like, what does that do for you? What's the point of it? And if they can't really specifically answer that question, we're going to have a longer conversation, just because it's like you can take so many vehicles to get to that place. And what I always want people to hear is so many times they will go the opposite direction of what they want because they're chasing a revenue number. And then they have a lot of pain and unnecessary pain and suffering. And to come back to the initial question was like, what are the root causes? I think sometimes it's shiny object, or like I saw someone else do it and I think I might want that, or like they seem happy, or
which is normal, by the way, too. Like if you're
I got
listening,
this great
it happens.
opportunity, and it feels like something that I could do and I could be great at, and it'll be awesome. And we call it like, ooh, piece of candy, syndrome. Ooh, piece of candy, and it's exciting and it's fun and it's new and it's grass is greener, but it's also can be alluring, and you don't realize, hey, what could I do in could my existing business just do that? Have we asked ourselves that question? Could this thing just do that thing and get me to the place I want as it is? And if it doesn't, is me doing that other thing avoiding doing the things that I need to do in my existing business to get it to the place I want to ultimately go? So that was a long-winded way of saying, look inward.
No, but it's like, because Alex is making me think of our own story of this, and Ian too, particularly when Ian, back when you were our business mentor, our business coach in a lot of ways. One, it made me think of, it's like, if you have communication issues in a relationship, and let's say you're married, right? And I haven't been married, but you guys have, and it's like, maybe, things don't seem to be going well, but maybe if we just have a kid, things will get better, right? And it's like, whoa, hey man, right? Get to the 5 million, I won't have problems anymore. And you're kind of like, hey, we're really taking a leap there that things are really going to get better. Let's not maybe do the hardest thing possible to see if that's what's going to fix things. But it did make me think too, as you were talking about that, Ian, Alex, the three of us have lived this. Think back to when, even when we were tracking, we've always been tracking data, but even when you are tracking your data religiously, and I think back to times where, we relied heavily and have relied heavily up and to this point of meta ads to drive predictable client acquisition. We've been in spots where all the numbers make sense. Hey, we know our cost to acquire customer. We've got our close rates. We've got, we're getting all this stuff dialed in, show up rates, and you take the bet, right? Hey, 7-8 months in a row, it's great. To your point, Ian, of the construction owner who's like, things are good, I want to go for it, right? And I see somebody else around me, they've got the bigger business, and things seem like their problems are different a little bit further on. And we fell into that. And part of it was like going through figuring out if we wanted it. And if that was the business we wanted, because we did. We went from, I can't remember, Alex, if it was 20K a month we were spending on ads, and then we went to 50K or 45, 50, pushed it even probably a little bit above that at times. It didn't yield. All the metrics all of a sudden started crumbling, right? And we're sitting there facing the reality of like, wow, is this the level of business and stress that we want to live? Can we do this multiple months in a row without having a better plan in terms of that? So I was just thinking back and pulling back the curtain on our business too, as well, of like saying, hey, for where we're at right now, that doesn't make a lot of sense. For even if it had worked out, the stressors that would have come with that in terms of all the new levels of clients. I look back, were we prepared to handle training all the coaches we would need to hire for that, or all the fractional CFOs we needed to hire in a tough time? So sorry to interject there, Ian. I just thought it was interesting of like, as you're bringing that, of just like the trauma response of like, oh yeah, that we've been that like, yeah, somebody else is getting there. Let's get to that higher level. And in some ways, I'm really glad it didn't work out. In a lot of ways, like, had all the numbers added up, we would be looking at a way different business, having to manage probably double or triple the size of team that we have now, realizing I don't think we had the skill set to be able to do that. But, getting back to kind of the root causes here, the only way we were able to make that risk or take that risk is we had done some planning, we had done things like that. So Alex, I do want to jump back to you, and I'm sorry for taking over there for a minute. Yeah, kind of from your point of view, seeing the stuff of, like what gets us there in the first place, right? Like what's going through that in terms of why are we running into these situations where first time I'm sure it's my accountant's fault, right? And your accountant's like, it's not my fault, man. You didn't really organize. Like there's root causes here. So I just love your take on it.
Yeah, there are two levels here that I see. There's root causes, and then there's like the financially, Alex, just practically tell me why my numbers are profitable, but I'm not. We'll get to that in a second.
Yep.
Since we're talking root causes, I just like echo everything Ian and Will just said. We're just not taking responsibility as owners for actually understanding the mechanics of our business. and the financials of our business. And so if I don't understand that, and I think that just making more money is going to solve the problems of not understanding my money, then I'm just going to scale something that's not really working yet. Or like Ian said, when we go to do some new thing, if we don't understand, for example, like you use the example, Ian, of a construction company that's doing a bunch of residential stuff, and then they expand into commercial stuff thinking this is great. What they don't realize there might be a big time gap between when I start a new division and when that new division is actually paying me what I think it will. And my current business has to foot the bill for that. Like I'm honestly, this happens all the time for business owners. It has for us as well, where we open up a new division. You're essentially starting a new business and you're asking that business to immediately produce or expecting it to immediately produce just because you have some of the infrastructure and some of the overhead and some of the industry knowledge and the connections and the marketing and sales piece of that. But that business may not actually yield results for a while, just like a brand new business might not. And so we need to plan on having runway for that. And if the existing business is struggling, saying, hey, existing business that's struggling, I also want you to go fund this new startup for me. Like that can compound the problem. So that's one piece of it, is the belief that more money equals fewer problems for me, or it will just immediately solve my lack of organization, understanding, or systems. That's a core problem. The other piece of this that we'll have to do a whole day on business archetypes. Ian and I both have different frames of how we look at this. In the money archetypes that I've encountered with business owners, there's 4 different ones. One of them is the hunter, where they'll solve financial problems by just doing more activity and not stop to ask what's actually working and what am I enjoying in this? And this is part of one of the underlying problems of, I don't really understand my numbers is one piece. The other piece is like, I'm actually, I believe that I'm okay and capable of just doing anything, and that making the business bigger will be enjoyable to me. When in reality, many owners find that as they scale, they're like, dude, if I was actually a lot happier and would be making a lot more money if my business was way smaller. I just had a conversation with someone this week that like they were looking at it and like if their business shrunk by 60% and they went back to being a little bit more in the trenches maybe, but having a much smaller team, a smaller scope of what they're doing, they would make a lot more money. And we call that the profit valley. We can do a whole episode on that. But like it is more expensive to scale. So underlying problems are you're in this spot where in the early phase, you can actually make more money with a much smaller team. But then there's this gray or like crappy area of the business where it's actually much more expensive, but you haven't scaled big enough yet to cover all of the additional overhead and space and team. And so underlying problems are we stay stuck in that spot and actually not understanding the numbers, not understanding how to lead and manage people. And maybe most importantly, not understanding how to lead and manage yourself keeps people stuck in that profit valley to where they can't then scale. They'll just accept more and they'll just say, more must get me there. But they hire the wrong people. They don't have the right systems in place. They start not enjoying what they're doing, and that then bleeds in through to the rest of the team. And like we've seen this where we were like, I remember Will when we were sitting there down making decisions about like, all right, let's triple ad spend, let's go, let's hit it. And there was this interesting mentality that I noticed in myself at the time, and now looking back, was like, that was the flaw, where we started spending a bunch more money because all the numbers had lined up. And I remember very specifically saying, we have to make this higher because there's such an opportunity cost not to. We just need a butt in the seat, so to speak. Like we just need to get someone in there because there's such a huge opportunity cost of not, that we were much lazier, I would say, now looking back, with really vetting, getting the right person in the right seat. And we made a number of hires that in retrospect were the wrong hires just because we saw the opportunity and it seemed like this is going to cost us way more not to hire this person. And that is, for our experience in our business, what I think has most hurt us as we scaled. And now like, cool, now we get to undo that and hire the right way. Maybe grow a little bit more slowly, be okay with incremental growth rather than exponential growth, not tie my value as a business owner to, am I growing by 20% every year? Like I'll sit down with these owners who will talk about their growth year over year, and they know the numbers every year. In 2021, I did this. In 22, I did this. In 23, I've got this growth of 20 to 30% every year. And that equals I am good as a business owner. That equals I am worth it as a father or mother who's providing for my family. That equals I am a great boss. That equals I am worth something because I've had this consistent growth. And as we start tying personal value and identity to that growth, regardless of, well, what's actually happening on the backside of it at the, bottom line, what am I keeping? that becomes a dangerous game. And so there's this identity piece, there's this understanding what's actually happening in my business piece, and there's this belief that more will always equal better that can really come to bite people. And that didn't answer any of the technical, like, well, Alex, you still didn't say, why does it show up on my P&L? We can talk about that. But I think those are some of the core underlying causes that I've seen in myself and others.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like just, pulling back the curtains on stuff, like we certainly got exposed for our lack of systems and ability to lead during that piece. And it's one of those things that you're like, hindsight now, you make it through and we made the adjustments that we needed to. But honestly, really grateful that we were able to do that and not go under. We see so many times where someone takes it there and goes, no, I still believe in this. I have to keep going for it. Then all of a sudden, you're like, I don't have any cash. Okay. That Stripe loan looks real appealing right now. That PayPal loan looks real enticing to cover, all the expenses that we had, that we were running to try and make this happen. And luckily, we've been able to avoid all of that up to this point. But it's really great to be able to do that. Other than I think we've taken out a Stripe loan at one point for a mastermind we joined, but we had that in our plans of sort of our cash flow and how we were going to do things. But yeah, I think so. We've touched on some root causes, getting into symptoms. I guess I'm just curious for you guys. I think, as we are meeting with so many of these clients who are kind of in these positions, just really looking at like, hey, I need help. I'm in a desperate spot. And we kind of have to untangle, just like you were talking about, Alex, like in us, in our own scenario, where it's like, okay, we got to untangle the kind of the mess that we made here short term. Just kind of curious, like, I think there's a big resistance to facing this. And especially if you're a hunter type, for example, hunter, not someone's name, but the hunter who's like, I can just go out and earn my problems. It's so hard to just get out of that mindset of like, my only answer is to go make more. I got to produce more. When we're talking with some of our clients, like through that, what have you guys seen or what have you found helpful? Maybe it's not even helpful, but maybe it's like, what have you seen hasn't been helpful in terms of, how do we help that person in that scenario that's just been really entrenched in this sort of way of viewing the world and their belief? Obviously, we can't provide endless amounts of therapy, despite all of us all needing endless amounts of therapy. But yeah, just curious for you guys what you see, because it's not just hey, yeah, your books are unorganized and your cash flow tracking, the dashboards that we're using are not right. It's obviously the person that we're dealing with. So I don't know, Ian, curious on as you're approaching someone like that who's pretty ingrained in that, I'm sure someone out there's listening, and I'm saying I'm sure because I've been that person and still struggle with this at times when you get excited and you're like, let's just go make more. Let's just go more, and more will solve the problem. And I think a lot of it, I don't want to lead you into it, but I think a lot of it's just sort of an escape issue, right? It's like, I just want to escape from facing a certain reality. But curious how you deal with that as you get a client like that.
Yeah. And all of those clients, I think I call them doing stuff people. They love doing stuff. And it's a sense of what I always like to get to the root of like, what's the reason or what's the thing you're looking to achieve. And it tends to be, I don't know if you guys have heard this one. There's like an entrepreneurial thing where it was like all or nothing, where a lot of entrepreneurs tend to have that feeling of if I don't feel like I'm growing or progressing, which for most people doesn't mean like better, it means more, I feel like I'm dying. In other words, if I stop moving and stop doing stuff, like that literally feels like death to me. And I'm gonna like, I don't know. I will do anything to avoid that feeling. And like, you're not alone. Like, I've been there many times. And I think the irony is the people that I actually see do very well with it over time have either built a team of trusted people that are going to be the ones that are like doing the other stuff or helping them through the other stuff of like, hey, you can go do stuff and things over here. We put guardrails on the business so you can just go play and do stuff because you like doing stuff. Now, from a deeper standpoint, what I enjoy is, can we sit with the reason why and have a conversation about it and talk about what you really want? And for most of those people, I've found, including myself a lot of times, they are tying their efforts or I have to earn this by doing this thing to then be able to accept the reward, or say it this way without getting into too much therapy because it's Friday. They don't feel like they're enough unless they're doing stuff. It's a one-liner. They don't feel like they're enough unless they're doing stuff. Ooh, it rhymes kind of. So take that for what you will. I've found for me, when I feel that way, what's really neat is if you can open up to people you trust, you have trusted advisor, trusted friend, trusted whatever, and talk through it, you realize a lot of people feel this way.
I
And
think
then
there's 3 people on this podcast that
yeah,
probably feel that
yeah,
pretty
exactly.
often. Yeah.
And then you realize, whoa, when you have these conversations about it, you go, "Wow, you too, man, this is crazy." And then what's really fun about it, I find, is you can start to see the beauty and the pros and cons to it. And you can actually start to see where it's gotten you to these wonderful places with some of this effort and this risk that you took that paid off. Because you're going to take risk either way. You're either going to be doing stuff and taking risk, or not doing stuff and taking risks. So it's risky. Because that was the thing. I know we were talking about like plan and be mindful and all this, but you still have to take risk at some point if you're a business owner. If you're a human, like we're breathing and stuff, flying around on a space rock, we're all taking risks. So I think it's just recognizing, have I sat with myself and zoomed out and reoriented or recalibrated to what matters most to me? And are these action behaviors getting me closer to that, or are they getting me further from that? And if I don't even I don't even know where to start with that, Ian. I don't even have a gauge. It's like, great. The first question to ask yourself is like, what do I really want? And then you might come up with a generic answer, and then you go, say more. What else do I like? What's behind that thing? And you can probably get to something pretty interesting behind it, and just sit with yourself for a minute, or find a buddy, find a trusted friend that you can sit with. And you'll probably find out that that person's going to look at you and go, same girl. And then you can have a conversation, and it's fun. But I'm going to leave it there because it's enough therapy for Friday. I would just say with the thing behind the thing, and see what comes up when you're not taking the action that you feel the impulse to take immediately every time you feel a certain way. Alex?
And I think oftentimes I haven't been forced to ask myself those questions or incentivized to make a change until I hit enough pain that it was like, I can't keep going down this road, which is a really sad thing. Like as humans, we're like, I will just keep doing what I do until it is so painful I must do something else, right? And I think what as business owners we get to decide is like, what's the pain that I'm going to choose into? Do I want to keep choosing the pain that's coming because of my lack of, whether it's self-awareness around this, like I'm just going to keep my head in the sand and I'm going to keep doing the thing and I'm going to keep taking action like you're talking about, Ian? Am I going to keep choosing this pain that if you're listening to this episode and you're feeling like, man, I am growing and I'm profitable, but I have no cash, like you're listening to this because at some level you're like, yeah, I have this pain. So do I choose that pain, or am I willing to choose the pain of discomfort in questioning why I do things and in questioning the speed at which I'm growing and if that's actually serving me and if I'm actually enjoying that? And it reminds me, we homeschool our kids. I do math. That's sort of my role. And when I sit down with my daughter, she's 10 years old right now, and we're sitting down doing math. And she likes to fly through math because she doesn't really enjoy it until she like gets in the groove, you know? The other day, like many days, she was flying through things, and I'll let her fly through things and get answers wrong because we wrote down a number wrong. And then we like, "Rah!" Right? And we had a day the other day where it was like multiple of those things had happened. Like I wrote a number down wrong, or I got the right answer and then I typed it in wrong to the computer. And when it told me I got it wrong, we got to a spot where after like 3 or 4 of these, she just like, I can't do this. It's too hard. And I was like, hey, can we recognize that if we actually slow down enough to be thoughtful, double check our work, make sure that we're actually doing the thing right, rather than optimizing for how do I get through it so fast, we will actually go far faster by slowing down. And it's the same principle where you say, you know, by yourself, you can go faster. With others, you can go far, whatever that thing is. That's a change of paradigm, right? That's a change of belief. And this belief that I must go fast and go hard as a business owner in order to win actually burns us versus I can slow down. I can be thoughtful about what I'm doing. I cannot act because I see others acting in a certain way, or I see what other people have. And I assume that because they have that, they must be happy and fulfilled. And I want that too. And we can stop measuring ourselves against this inner child that always feels like we're not enough and must constantly prove ourselves to others and maybe to ourselves. That ability to slow down and stop and say, wait a minute, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like you talked about, Ian, that's really tough. It's like, all right, well, do we choose that tough? Are we willing to? Or are we only going to choose the tough of banging our head against the wall because we just need more? We just need more. And oftentimes with business owners, like, look, it might progress to the point if we're never willing to slow down and stop and look and take responsibility for how we've gotten here, then we're just going to keep getting more of the same versus hitting the brakes a little bit and going slightly slower now so that we can keep going further. Later, choose your hard, ultimately. Will, how do you think about that? Because you've been on the other side of this too, in the not like finance nerd seat as a business owner and gone through all this. Like what lessons have you learned as we've grown this thing and maybe observed in me and Ian and or in clients in like, hey, what do you now know that you wish you would have told yourself 3 years ago before we like hit the pedal hard on scaling?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a couple of things as you're talking, Alex, and Ian too, during your kind of your answers was just one of like kind of my summary of this is even though we haven't gotten into like, hey, here's the technical reason why on your P&L it says you're profitable, but you don't have cash in the bank. I think because at the end of the day, it's very rarely it's just a bookkeeping error. And it's like, hey, you actually should have more cash in your bank. And, there was someone didn't transfer money correctly. It's usually a symptom, of a deeper root cause of not being organized, not building systems to track this stuff. But I do think why we end up in so many of those places, why we've pushed maybe bumping up into those situations ourselves in our own company has been, yeah, it's the same things. It's the lady in the red dress, right? It's the like, hey, somebody else is doing this over here. I saw they're doing this kind of offer. It feels like a tighter month of cash. Why aren't we doing another offer? Let's go do it. And to your point, Alex, of like, well, we're essentially saying, why don't we go build a new business to solve a short-term problem that we're facing? And that just takes energy, takes time, pushes you that way to make bad decisions versus going, why isn't the first business working the right way? Right. And it's like, hey, well, maybe we're dependent on one marketing channel, for example, and it didn't work that month. If we had another marketing channel and that had brought in the same amount of clients, would we be in this situation? No, we wouldn't be considering launching that new offer. All right. Well, maybe we should look at that first problem. It's like, yeah, but I've been looking at that problem for a while and I don't know how to figure it out. It's like, okay, right? You get into those spots and it does make me think there's Hormozy does his workshops and, people go up and ask questions. And there was a scenario I'm probably going to get slightly wrong here, which is, see if I can find the clip to give it to people. But it's this guy who runs like boot camp classes. They have like exercise boot camp stuff. And he's like, it's all in person. Like, oh, we really crush these. They do 1 day and then 3 day or 5 day events. I can't remember exactly the details of it, but he's like, our 1 days, we don't really make a lot of money, but like people love it. But like 5 days, that's where we make money. And so Hormozy's kind of like, well, cool. Like, why do you do the 1 days? He's like, well, this other group in town, they started doing 1 days and they're trying to do us better. And he's like, cool, let them. And he was like, but we've got the hold on this 1 day and we want to keep it. And he goes, but you just told me you don't make any money on the 1 day events. And he was like, yeah, but I'm worried that they're going to come. He goes, what are you worried about? They're going to build a broke business. And, the reality hits him like, wow, I've been stressing so hard about this like perceived problem of someone taking over something that's not even working or serving me. And I'm putting all this energy and time into how do I, you know, combat this threat, even though it's like you would love for someone to take the problem of this thing not working, but you feel so emotionally attached to it and you're willing to like just keep going and fighting. And it's just makes me think of that where I've been there, been guilty of that. You see somebody else who's like, we did 3 million this year and we're doing this. And you're like, my life's meaningless unless we get there. And I need to have the status of being of that person. And then, how many times have we met somebody who has a double, triple, quadruple size revenue business of us. And they hate their lives more than we do in terms of like, I make less than I ever made. I have all this headache of team and staff. And now I've got HR and legal stuff I got to do. And it's like, maybe I shouldn't be so envious and chill out a little bit. And so yeah, that's what's been. So Ian, I want to talk to you because I know you had something you want to bring up. We can wrap up here too, because we got to do some team one-on-ones here in a minute.
Baby, I love it. Yeah, I love what you guys there with Alex. What you said made me think a lot of, like, yeah, there's no such thing as growth without some sort of resistance. Like it's kind of like part of the definition of growth is you have to have some sort of resistance or perceived suffering, something that's going to be a catalyst so you then learn and grow. One thing is we go back to that, the hunter person or the person that's very actionable. I think that this is a challenge that I'll say to all you fellow hunters out there. One thing I hear a lot as a story or as a justification or as a script from that person, including myself when I do it, is it's either I'm the only one who could do it, or I got to grind, or I got to hit this thing, or you just got to power through, grow or die, bro. All of the things, right? You've heard it a few times. I'm going to make a challenge for you just to think about this slightly different. Alex said it in a great way too, but it's like you going and taking an action is the easiest, most comfortable route for you as a person who says you're seeing growth. That requires no resistance because that's what you're naturally going to do. The actual growth that you can do is to not immediately take an action. That's the harder thing for you to do. That is where your expansion and growth will come from. It usually requires thinking time. And then to go back to Will, what you said about the business owner there with the group classes. One of the easiest tools for this in person. So you're going to want to do stuff. So I'm going to give you something to do in that time. You're welcome. When things come up or you want to go take an action, here's an exercise you can do. Just keep asking yourself the question, and then what? And then just sit with it and go to the next thing. And probably this. And then what? Probably this. And then what? And what you'll find is usually you just get back to right where you're sitting. And
And then what?
that person to start to realize, and then you bring it into what am I seeking to feel right now? And now you'll find your answer. Good times. It's just something I've seen so many times with myself that I go on this big hamster wheel just to get back to the place I was instead of going like, hey, I could just be here. That's okay.
Love it. All right. If you're sitting there, ask yourself, and then what? And see where you end up. And guys, I enjoyed this one. I feel like we I I want to say we'll do an episode where we'll get into the technical side. I have a feeling we're just going to probably stay more on the feels side of stuff, just because that's kind of what we do. If you're listening and you are a business owner and you're interested in like the technical side of stuff, we do host workshops usually pretty monthly. Summer would be a little bit slower, but feel free to jump on our website, ceofinanceacademy.com, and join our email list. We'll hit you up when we run our next workshop. But guys, any parting words, any parting shots?
Dude, I got nothing
Five
other
is
than
back.
like go listen to the episode and think about what resonated with you. Like that's the last thing. It's like, hey, I just spent 48 minutes of my life listening and thinking about this. What next? And then what? And then
If you're a Claude user, we probably won't hear from you for a while. Fable 5 has been reopened again. Our Fable has been opened again. So maybe this time next year you'll catch this. This episode will be suggested in an AI search for you. But otherwise, for all of you who are not using Fable right now, hopefully you've enjoyed this. And we'll catch you on the next episode of Just Figuring It Out.
Bye.